Good evening, everyone. Well, it's day 4 of the May Challenge. My name's Catherine. I'm the founder of KISS, Keto It's Simple for Success. And you're actually joining me, like I said, on day 4 of our May Challenge. Now, we're here tonight live in the KISS Facebook group, in the public group. If you're watching this on YouTube, please do come and join us in the public group because you will be able to get all this content live. You'll be able to comment and post at the time, get your questions answered. So we'd love to have you. It's a really informal group full of fantastic people. And like I said, we'd love to see you there. So tonight then, on day 4, I wanted to have a chat about the transition. Let me just move my camera because it's a bit rubbish. The transition into the state of ketosis. I wanted to have a chat to you about some of the common side effects that people notice when they start detoxing off sugar and start to move into that ketogenic state. And I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the practical ways that we can make this transition much easier and much more enjoyable, really. And we can start off as we mean to go on, really, with that enjoyable state of ketosis where we feel energetic, we feel warm, and we start to lose a bit of that weight that we're looking to lose. So like I said, if you're watching me on YouTube, I would love you to please subscribe to the channel. It's really important. Oh, there's my little dog. Really important that we raise the number of subscribers there to get the channel looked at. And of course, all the links that you need for the May Challenge, so all the rules of the challenge, all the downloads and the resources that you might need, and all the links to the different groups and the different things are in the description of the video. So please go underneath the video and get those resources, which will really, really help you. Now, some of the people on the May Challenge are actually following the 28-day meal plan and beginner's guide. The reason to invest in that ebook is not just about having your meals planned out and having the shopping lists and all the resources that you need to get this bang on, but it's also what you get in terms of membership of our site and membership of our exclusive members only group. Now that's where we do the Thursday Theory videos. It's where you'll find me for the majority of my time, and it's where you'll find all the exclusive content and the more one-to-one and bespoke support. So please do consider, if that's something you want to do, then the link to that 28-day meal plan beginner's guide is again in the description of the video. Tonight I am live, so do feel free to drop me a hello or a comment or a question as we go through tonight. I love these videos to be interactive because ultimately we're a big community. And this is all about you. So if there's anything that you need to know for your journey to make things easier, then do drop me a question. It's late in the UK, and I always feel bad that I can't stay up until the early hours of the morning. But unfortunately, it's not unfortunate, but life goes on, and with small children in the house who are determined to still get up early in the morning, I can't stay awake for all night long without really paying for it the next day. So I know it's the middle of the afternoon for a lot of you, but I hope you can join us. And if not, if you're just watching this on catch up, then welcome. And this is why I go live in the group, so that these videos are still there for people to watch afterwards as well. So I'm glad that we're catching up. All these go on YouTube as well, so please, if you are watching me in the Facebook group, there are a whole host of videos in YouTube now on the KISS channel. So I would love you to go over there and watch some more videos because I talk a lot, and if you want to hear me talk about keto, if you want to hear me talking about fasting, if you want to hear me talking about mindset and things like that, then head over onto YouTube and watch those. Okay, so we're going to crack on with our content. Like I said, it's day 4 of the challenge. Day 3 was yesterday. I didn't do a video because I was in the members group pretty much most of the day and writing a blog post all about sweeteners. And I hope you've been onto the KISS website to see that. Yeah, Sherry says she likes the live video support and info. Well, I'm really glad of that, Sherry, and I love doing it. This is probably my favourite part, is having this interaction with people. I love answering questions in the group, but there's nothing quite like this sort of personal time with people. Okay. So, yeah, like I said, so if you want to see that blog post that I wrote about sweeteners, so, you know, why you won't find them on the KISS plan, why we're trying to give them up for May, what is it about sweeteners that I personally feel people should know. So, yeah, go and read that blog. You may learn something new. Okay, so let's get on with day 4 then. I wanted to talk to you about what it's like detoxing from sugar. Now, for me, when I started my journey, I was very, very overweight, and I also had high blood sugar. And I actually went to the doctor with a skin condition. It seemed that my immune system was really, really low, and I just couldn't, I was just catching everything. And, you know, it ended up with sort of infections of my skin. I just couldn't seem to ditch, you know, a common cold. I just seemed to be going from one illness to another and not getting any better. So that's why initially I went to the doctor. And of course I came out from that appointment with this potential diagnosis of diabetes, which turned out to be the case. I had type 2. So when I came off sugar, not only did I have this huge amount of blood sugar that needed to drop, but I also had all the infections. 2 seconds, my cat is desperate to go out. Sorry about that, but if I'd left her, she just would have got louder and louder. Okay, so like I said, not only did I have to reduce my blood sugar, and I had the detox symptoms from reducing my blood sugar, but I also had a bit of a toxic die-off. So there was lots of organisms living off the sugar in my blood and all over and inside my body, loving the free sugar, that had to die off. And of course, my body then had to process all that toxic waste, really, of all this die-off. So it was a bit of a tough time. I had 2 weeks where I didn't feel very well at all, and I'll be honest with you that that's the case. And in fact, from my entire journey, the first 2 weeks were by far the most difficult. And I want you to know that if you are starting this May challenge, or you're starting on your ketogenic journey, then it is just those first initial weeks that are really, really, really tough. And after that point, it gets so much easier, and it is so worth really, really holding on, holding tight, getting through those first couple of weeks. And then it's really downhill from there. It really is. So I want you to know that it's those first couple of weeks that can be really tough, but after that things get really, really easy, because you fall into that way of eating. You start to feel the benefits of ketosis. You start to feel you know you're getting better. You're coming down off the sugar and things. So it definitely does get better as we go through. Okay, so some of the things that we may be dealing with in those first couple of weeks. Well, the big one is headaches, to be honest. Lots of people experience transient headaches when they're coming off sugar, and you know they want to know what they can do to help it. Well, the key really for headaches is hydration and electrolytes. So head over onto the website, read the blog on electrolytes, because what you'll notice is I have actually put in there quite a bit about sodium, potassium, magnesium, and how these help different aspects and different symptoms. Now, in terms of headaches, getting in enough water, but also enough sodium, can really, really help headaches. Now, there's only so much we can do in terms of headaches which are due to detoxing from sugar. Certainly eating sugar, although it would take the headache away, as soon as you take sugar away again, that headache will come back. So to a certain extent, it is something that you have to go through. That there's no two ways about it. And the severity of the headaches and the nausea and the detox is different for different people. Each individual will have a very unique response to coming off sugar. Ultimately, not only is it a physical addiction, but it is an emotional and psychological addiction too. So I don't think that we should belittle potentially how severe coming off sugar can be. And I want people to know that the whole reason that we've got the Facebook group, the whole reason that I offer one-to-one sessions, the whole reason that the membership site exists and the beginner's guide and everything else, the whole reason it exists is because this is not necessarily an easy process for everybody. Some people seem to sail through it. Potentially they weren't, eating a lot of sugar, or they didn't have some of the metabolic disorders that other people have. And other people find it really, really difficult. So this is why all the support exists. And I want people to know that it's there for them, for you to use. Hi, Tracy. Yeah, so Tracy says, great information. Wish I'd known this at the beginning of my journey. Tracy, I wish I'd known it as well. Believe me, I had nothing at the beginning of my journey at all. It was probably 6 months in before I even considered looking for a ketogenic group on Facebook. And by then, all the hard stuff was already over. And I had nothing and nobody. And I this is why it exists, I guess. Yeah, absolutely, Sherry. I think a lot of us do find it difficult to come off sugar. However, once we've done it, it's done. And I want people to know that, it's not this ongoing process, and they're not going to be coming off sugar and detoxing for 6 months, because that's not the case. The really tough stuff is done within 2 weeks. And after that, it does get a lot easier, particularly if you've got all the support and you've got the information there to put in place the type of ketogenic diet that is going to support you, make you feel good, make you feel energetic, and avoid some of the issues that people have. So headaches, definitely one. Nausea again can be due to detox, can also be as your blood sugar starts to lower as well. People feel nauseous, and again, it's about eating enough food, so making sure that you've got plenty of keto food, that you're having your 3 meals a day, that for those first 2 weeks you feel free to snack if you need to, if you're hungry or if you're craving, to have plenty of keto food around, to have high fat food so your body feels reassured that there's lots of energy in the environment, that it's not starving, that it doesn't go into some sort of panic mode. And that's key really to getting through it, is to make sure that the diet that you're going on to is nutritious, that it replaces your electrolytes, that it keeps you hydrated, that it provides your body with nutrition and fat and energy and the actual things your body needs to go through the process, go through the transition, and to actually come out of that process fitter, stronger, healthier, and feeling much better. So it's not a time to be fasting. It's not a time to be calorie restricting or anything like that. Those first 2 weeks of a ketogenic diet need to nourish, feed, reassure the body that it is not starving, and that the only things that we have to tackle during that period is that detox from sugar. Don't attempt anything else during that time. Everything else can come later. There's plenty of time for our restricted food windows. There's plenty of time for our snacking. There's plenty of time for all these things to come. So when you first start out, that your main concern is coming off carbohydrates. That is enough for anybody to deal with. You don't have to deal with anything else at that specific time. And that's why having something like a meal plan is really important, because the only thing you have to think about or consider or plan is how you're going to handle the cravings. That's it. That's the only thing you need to think about. Okie dokie. So moving on to cravings then, strangely enough. So I think that when we come off sugar, when we first start to feel that overwhelming urge to find carbohydrates in the diet, it can come as a little bit of a shock, because although we're normally driven, if we are burning sugar, if we are taking on carbohydrates, we are driven to find them in the environment. We're driven to look for more. However, I think that the fierceness potentially of the cravings when we stop giving the body sugar can be quite intense. And what I'll always say to people is, if you're not hungry, you can tell yourself it's a craving. If you're not eating enough, it's really difficult to understand the difference between hunger and a sugar craving. So it's really important, like I said, to make sure that we're feeding the body with proper nutrition, and we're giving ourselves those proper meals, so that when those cravings do come, we know what they are. We understand it to be a sugar craving, and it's it's not such a big issue. So back to my blog really on sweeteners. A lot of people, the first instinct, because their body is physically and psychologically addicted to sugar, the first thing that we do is look for substitutes. So you'll hear a lot of people asking, yeah, absolutely, Sherry, and we know as people who are carrying body fat around, it's very unlikely that we're hungry, because we have all this body fat. So it's understanding that, and having, like you said, that savviness that it's a craving, and having the tools to actually be able to deal with that, and having the strategies in place. And like you did today, which I think is really, really good, use the group, reach out to us, be honest, be vulnerable, get that stuff that is acting as a temptation or making you think about sugar, get it out in the open, write it down, have that 30 seconds, a minute of writing it down to think logically about it, and then suddenly you start thinking logically and you're not in the fridge. Okay, so I completely lost my train of thought now. Yeah, we were talking about cravings, weren't we? So people start to look for alternatives, and I do see a lot of people, even in the KISS group, who are new, sort of looking for dessert recipes, looking for sweet treats, looking for anything they can possibly get to give them that fix. Now, sugar is an addiction, and for any addiction, what you can't do if you're trying to move away from that addiction is keep feeding the craving. That is what nurtures your addiction, is maintaining those behaviors and maintaining that relationship, that type of relationship with that type of food. So substituting the addictive food, so substituting sugar with sweetener, doesn't necessarily help those cravings go any quicker. And in fact, you could continue to seek that sweet taste for as long as you take on sweetener. So I would say to read the blog, to understand that it doesn't matter what you're replacing, which sweetener you're using, whether it be artificial or natural or whatever. This is not just a physical thing. This is psychological. This is triggered by receptors on the tongue that actually just are triggered when something is sweet, whether it be sugar, honey, whether it be saccharin, whether it be sucralose, whether it be monk fruit, whether it be any of the sweeteners. It's exactly the same trigger. It's exactly the same neural pathways that we get, that reward system, that dopamine and everything else. So just be aware that one of the things that can actually make cravings last longer and make them more difficult to actually deal with is replacing sugar with sweeteners, and replacing carbohydrate food that we're craving with a fake version of that carbohydrate food. So what I would recommend is actually killing the craving, getting rid of it completely, and going into your ketogenic journey without that dependency on sugar, and without the dependency on the desserts and the sweet food and all the stuff that got us here in the first place. Because ultimately, all that food that you're looking for, those cheesecakes, those cookies, those biscuits, that's what led you to where you are now. at the beginning of this journey. The food that will get you through your ketogenic journey and will get you to being lean and fit and healthy and younger looking, and all the things that we're looking for that will reduce your cholesterol, that will get you off your pain medication or whatever it is, whatever the goals you have for being keto. The foods that will get you there are meat, poultry, fish, fats, vegetables, nuts and seeds. That's it. Sweeteners, processed flours, processed foods, fake low carb sweet treats, sweetened drinks, they will prolong the process and they will push your goals further into the future. So if you're on this May challenge and you're trying to understand why I'm being so tough on people, it's because I've been there. This is, I'm at the other end now of the journey, and I've experienced it. And one of the most positive things and one of the most freeing, liberating things that I did was to stop seeking out carbohydrate alternatives, and to realize that carbohydrate foods are no longer part of what I eat. I think the only thing left is my flaxseed bread. That's it. And I only have that to dip in soup pretty much once maybe a week now. It's really, really reduced in my diet too. So other than that, there's no cookies, there's no cakes, there's no I'm trying to think what else. There's no fat bombs, there's no desserts, there's no nothing. I eat meat and fish and poultry and veg and fat, and all the things that brought me all the way through my journey, right the way to the end, and actually got me to my goal. And I think one of the key things that I did to get me here is to not feed my cravings. I killed them dead. I've had a couple of instances since where I've realised how important that was. I spoke a little bit about in the members group yesterday about a bit of a cookie binge that I had at one point, which brought all my cravings back. Managed to devour an entire batch of cookies before anyone else in the family had even knew they were baked. So those cravings are still there. If I feed them, I can bring them back whenever I like. Okie dokie. So that's one of the things. If you want a tip on dealing with cravings, my number one tip is to kill them. Don't feed them. The longer you keep them going, the more difficult they will be to actually deal with. Okay, so that's hunger dealt with, as in just eat keto food. Cravings dealt with, headaches dealt with, nausea again dealt with because that's a detox symptom. The other thing to be really aware of is low energy. Now, obviously, when we give up sugar, there's going to be that period when the blood sugar is depleting, then our stored glycogen, so the stored carbohydrates in our liver and in our muscles, that's going to start to be depleted as well. And there comes a point where sugar is low, but ketones are not yet high. So there is that dip in energy. And normally people get it around sort of days 3 to 5, really, can be low energy days. And during those days, I think, again, it's one of those things that a lot of people will just have to go through. But that some of the top tips are making it last as a short time as possible is to stay hydrated. Make sure you are replacing electrolytes. So if you haven't read the blog on the KISS website about electrolytes, now is the time to do it, because electrolytes are not something you can ignore. You will end up having issues if you don't replace electrolytes. So make sure you're replacing your electrolytes and make sure that you are eating enough fat. Now, I think a lot of people will tell you in the group from their experience that the amount of fat I'm talking about right now is probably more than you've ever eaten in your life. And I think that when people aren't tracking, which we don't track in KISS, we need to get those proportions right. So when we're talking about fat, I am talking about more than 100 grams of fat per day. It's a lot. And for people who are coming off a low calorie diet or a low fat diet, or of being wary of fat before, the amount of fat I'm talking about is hi, the amount of fat I'm talking about is a lot. But you do actually need that. You need to replace the energy that you were getting from carbohydrates with healthy natural fats. So we're talking about eggs and bacon and butter and lard and coconut oil and cheese and cream, and nuts and seeds and all these things that come into the diet and make up that natural fat. And some of the best sources of fats for bringing your energy levels up quickly are short chain fatty acids. Yeah, absolutely. Sherry's saying that whatever I thought was enough, I doubled it, and even then I was still not eating enough fats in the first month. I know it takes a lot, doesn't it, to get it into your head that our body is now fueled by fat. So those 5 to 6 portions of carbs that we were eating every single day, they all need replacing with healthy natural fat. It is a lot of energy that we need to replace, so it's a lot of fat. So the best way to bring your energy levels up really, really quickly are with the short chain fatty acids that you'll find in things like butter, and with the medium chain fatty acids, the MCTs, that you will find in coconut oil. So those two things can be really, really helpful if energy is low, because they are very quickly turned into ketones in the body, and it's the ketones that will start to make you feel energetic and will start to replace the energy that you were getting from glucose and sugar previously. So I would say that if you're feeling really that you're lacking energy, first of all, check your electrolytes. But the next thing you need to check is that you are getting your short chain fatty acids and your medium chain fatty acids and your saturated fat as well from animal sources. So cover everything in butter, cook everything in coconut oil, then add some more, then get some olive oil on your salad, and just make sure that make sure that when you're choosing sources of protein, that you're looking for high fat protein as well. But altogether, we're looking for that significant increase in fat to give us the energy. But yeah, when I speak to people who are low energy during those first 2 weeks, when I look at what they're eating and drinking, there tends to be issues with their hydration and electrolytes. But I think the key thing and the most common issue that I come across with people in low energy is they're not embracing fat yet. They haven't quite taken that deep dive into healthy natural fats. For a variety of reasons, but usually it's literally just habitual. They're just not used to the amount of fat that I am talking about when I talk about high fat. It's normally 10 times more than people would normally eat. So it's a significant increase for a lot of people, and it does sometimes take time. So I would say to make sure that you do have lots and lots of healthy fats in the diet, and that you're using the KISS plate diagram to ensure that not only is your protein source high in fat, but you're also adding that source of natural fat as well on top of that fatty protein. So yeah, that's energy covered, and I hope that's helpful. The other really common side effect is muscle cramps. Now, again, this is an electrolyte issue, and it's all the electrolytes working together when it comes to muscle cramps, because electrolytes are minerals in the body. 2 seconds, it's the cat. She wants to come in now. Bear with me. She'll just get louder. This doesn't happen to celebrities, does it? Okay, yeah, so electrolytes are minerals in the body which pass electrical signals between them, and muscle contractions and muscle relaxation and cramping is all to do with these electrical signals. So it's all the electrolytes working together which reduce muscle cramps. So if you do have cramping, then first of all make sure that you're salting your food, that you've got a good unrefined salt to get sodium, potassium, which comes from meat, it comes from green vegetables, but you can also buy potassium based salt, which is quite easy to use to salt your food, but magnesium tends to be a big one when it comes to muscle cramps, and you can get magnesium from green vegetables, but you can also get magnesium on average how many litres of water a day. It will depend. I think it's really important to drink to thirst. However, if you're thirsty and you can't quench your thirst with water, that tends to mean that it's electrolytes that are the issue. And if we keep drinking water without replacing electrolytes, then our thirst can become completely unquenchable, and we can actually deplete ourselves of electrolytes by over drinking. So personally, I drink 3 litres of water a day. I love water, but I think that, other people get fluids from other places, and all the fluid that we take in over the day counts. So I would say I drink 3 litres of water, but I don't drink a lot of other drinks, so that is pretty much all the fluid I get in a day, about 3 litres, which is fine. But I do know that when I go into ketosis, that my thirst increases, and normally it's because I haven't quite caught up with my electrolytes and I'm not replacing them quick enough. So Sherry says, I'm so lucky not to have experienced cramp. Yeah, I know. Well, I'll talk about magnesium in a minute. Alex said, is this the same thing as restless leg syndrome? I've had that for years, almost every night. Have it now. Yeah, Alex, restless legs, again, tends to be an electrolyte issue, the twitching of the muscle. So I would say that one of the best things you can try, I'm not going to say it's going to cure it overnight, because it takes a while, but things like magnesium salt in the bath, so Epsom salt baths work really well. Magnesium oil, which you can actually rub on your legs, tends to be really, really good. Personally, I take a magnesium supplement, because that's the one thing that no matter what I've done, I can't seem to get enough magnesium in my food. Unfortunately, our food is a little bit depleted in minerals these days with modern farming. So I do actually take magnesium, and I take magnesium citrate, which not only is helpful and is quite bioavailable, but it also does help with constipation as well, because constipation, again, it's not necessarily a lack of fibre. The gut, the muscles of the gut require these electrolytes to be in balance in order to do what they do, which is just to contract and relax, and to move food along the process. So yeah, I would definitely say if you've got restless legs or anything like that, then try magnesium. It certainly won't harm to give it a go. But yes, it's definitely due to electrolytes. So fingers crossed for you that we can get that sorted. Okay, so moving on, oddly, it's strange how we went from magnesium onto constipation, but let's talk about constipation, because when we change our diet, there is obviously a significant difference. Where do I get magnesium citrate? You can buy it in health food shops. You won't find it in your supermarket. The magnesium in supermarket tends to be magnesium oxide, which is not very absorbable at all. So if you're looking for a highly absorbable magnesium, there's a couple of different ones. So again, head to the electrolyte blog, because I've actually listed all the different types of magnesium supplements that you can get and which ones are the best for the particular issues that you're looking to resolve. But magnesium citrate is easy to find in health food shops, and of course is, like everything else, available on Amazon without any issue at all. So you can just get it there, and it's quite cheap. It's cheaper than some of the other magnesiums, and for me, I find them more than adequate. So I don't know whether the significant price hike of some of the other magnesiums is worth it, to be honest, because I seem to be absolutely able to manage symptoms on magnesium citrate, which is much cheaper. Yeah, so talking about constipation then. So like I said, huge difference in the type of food and the volume and bulk of food. when we eat a high carbohydrate diet, there are 4 calories per gram of carbohydrate. When we go on to a high fat diet, there's more energy, so there's more calories in less food because fat is higher in calories per gram. So we're actually not eating the volume of food, and we are still eating naturally, and we are still eating the number of calories that we should be eating, but the volume is less. So first of all, you've got less food going through the system. The second thing is, if we're taking out processed food from our diet and we're eating very nutrient dense food, then of course a lot of the food that we're eating is actually going to be digested and used. So again, we become more efficient, and we don't actually produce the amount of waste that we did previously. So that's 2 reasons that there's less coming out the other side. And the third reason, again, is that people don't eat enough fat. And fat is what lubricates the bowel and allows the food to move through. And secondly, people always assume that piling loads and loads of fibre into the diet will help with constipation. Now, that's not necessarily the case, and particularly when it's keto-related constipation. Actually increasing the amount of fat and ensuring that you're replacing your electrolytes is probably the 2 biggest things to do in terms of keeping the bowel moving. The third thing is thinking about our gut health. Now, this is something that we don't think about a lot, and particularly if you're on a high carbohydrate diet, then your gut bacteria is going to be pretty poor, and you're not going to have the types of bacteria. You're not going to have the types of bacteria in the gut that you need to help you digest food properly and to move food through the gut efficiently and quickly. So I would say that if you're not looking after your gut bacteria yet, this is something really, really to look at, because in terms of reducing constipation, but also reducing the risk of digestive issues in future, looking at our gut bacteria is really, really important. Kiss coffee made with filter coffee helps with constipation. Yes, absolutely it does. The reason it helps with constipation is twofold. Firstly, coffee stimulates the bowel, but secondly, Kiss coffee is high fat and allows, like I said, it lubricates the food through the bowel, so it's really, really good. And it has MCTs, and as we know, if anyone has ever taken MCT oil, it's not, not something I rave about, but if you ever have, then you'll know that the body moves it through quite quickly. It has that effect. So definitely something to look at. But in terms of your gut bacteria, do think about sweeteners and how they affect your gut bacteria. Basically, they kill gut bacteria, which is not good. Think about processed food and the chemicals that we're eating and what their impact on our gut bacteria is. But also have a think if you're actually doing anything to help proliferate gut bacteria. Are you actually taking in good bacteria in your food? So are you eating fermented foods? I'm talking about live cultures in kefir and in kimchi, in sauerkraut, those sorts of things. Or are you taking a really decent probiotic to actually make sure that you are proliferating gut bacteria? Something to think about, and I think in terms of long-term health, definitely something that we should look at to help prevent constipation in future, but also as we get older, the gut is more and more important to look after, because it's the gut that actually stops us from catching a lot of diseases. It keeps us healthy. It's a huge part of our immune system, and if we can do anything about that now, then that would be great. What is a probiotic and where do we find them? Okay, so when we're talking about probiotics, we're actually talking about things that have living bacteria in them. So we're talking about live yogurt, and believe me, not all yogurt is live. So you'd have to actually find a yogurt that was live, and of course is not high in carbs. Things like kefir, which is milk, which has a live culture in it, which you leave to ferment, and the bacteria grows through the milk and turns it into a sort of yogurty, drinky thing, but it's full of bacteria. Things like sauerkraut, but again, not all sauerkraut is live. So you are looking for that raw, live sauerkraut that's been left to ferment and the bacteria to grow over the sauerkraut. Kimchi, that sort of thing. But again, you want the live version, not the pasteurized, bacteria killed off version. But you can get probiotic supplements as well, and they're literally capsules full of live bacteria, which you take. And I know it sounds dreadful, doesn't it? However, it is the bacteria in our gut that help us to digest our food, but also it's the bacteria in our gut that has a major part in our insulin resistance, in our food cravings, and actually in our weight. You know, it's very intrinsically linked to the health of our gut. So definitely something to think about in terms of, you know, managing constipation and general health. And you know, if you never want to have a cold again, then you need to look after your gut bacteria, basically. So we don't use artificial sweeteners at all. Yeah, absolutely. Sharmila, we're all adults, and I know there are people who are using sweeteners. However, the reason I took them off, well, firstly, it's in the blog, so you can read it. But very briefly, what I found on the trial was trialed with 60 people. Some people used sweeteners on the trial and others didn't. There was a significant increase in the number of people who were struggling to lose weight and struggling to come off carbohydrates because they were using sweeteners. It was very, very significant that they were struggling far more than the people who just gave up sweet food. And obviously, sweeteners are not great for the body either. So two reasons really. We're all adults and we decide what we eat. Nobody's going to tell you what to do and what not to do. However, the reason I took them off is purely because those people who didn't use sweeteners during the KISS trial were significantly more likely to achieve their goal, get through the 28 days, become ketogenic, become fat adapted, and lose weight, which is why they were there in the first place. So I think that to me was significant enough for me to remove it. What's the brand name we can look for live sauerkraut? It's probably not a brand name, Shauna, to be honest. You're probably more likely to find smaller producers making it. I would have thought ethnic shops, and in particular, if you've got a Polish shop or Eastern European shops near you, I don't know about for me, I have found it in the sort of ethnic food area of the supermarket. But it's usually chilled, obviously, because it's alive. So you can normally find it there. You can find it online as well. But yeah, definitely look for the live stuff. There's no point buying the stuff that isn't alive. It's just pickled cabbage when you buy it and it's not alive. And you can make it yourself. And in fact, I would definitely say it's worth it because it's really cheap. It is literally cabbage, water and salt, and that's it. You just got to leave it to ferment. So it's definitely something that's you can make at home, no problem at all. And in fact, all these fermented foods are very, very simple to make at home. But yeah, if you're going to buy one, then it has to be alive. But you're more likely to find it as a small producer rather than a big brand name. Okie dokie. So moving along from there. So constipation. Okay, we'll leave that there because I went off on a tangent. But I think it is quite important. So the other things then that are less common, people having a bit of digestive distress. So some people have reported having diarrhea when they've been detoxing from sugar. And again, it's not as common as the constipation is, but however, there's bound to be that period of transition. If you're changing your diet drastically, there can be that period. But again, if you're at all concerned about your health, do go and see a doctor to make sure, because it might not be anything to do with your change in diet. It might not be anything keto related. So if you are worried about any of these symptoms, then it's worth seeing a doctor. But with diarrhea, what I would say is just to make sure that you're not overdosing on magnesium or taking MCT oil or that sort of thing, because those two things in particular can give you really, really loose stools. So if you have got diarrhea and you're doing either of those two things, then stop them and just go back to normal food, and hopefully because we're eating good food, then our body just gets better. I don't so far know of anyone who's got ill from doing a proper ketogenic diet. It just I haven't known anybody that's had issues once they've got that diet right. And everyone's going to be individual and different, and there may be intolerances to new foods, but so far everyone's been fine. So can not having a gallbladder? Yeah, so not having a gallbladder. Now, the gallbladder is not what produces bile. And I think this is a common misconception. People who no longer have a gallbladder think that maybe they don't produce bile anymore, which is wrong. It's actually the liver that produces bile acids from cholesterol, believe it or not. So if you think about the whole process of what we need to increase the amount of bile we produce, well, we need an increase in cholesterol to actually help us produce more bile. Now, the gallbladder just stores the bile and squeezes it into the stomach when there's that high fat meal there. But without the gallbladder, we still produce bile. So we can still process fats and we can still digest them. And for most people, removing the gallbladder is the end of the issue because they're still producing bile. But there is that misconception that you can no longer eat a high-fat diet. And from what I've seen, that doesn't tend to be the case. Some people have needed to supplement with bile salts until they're producing enough of their own bile. However, I also know scores of people who don't have a gallbladder, which is crazy because in the UK it's not that common a thing to do, is remove the gallbladder. But I know in the US it's very, very common because of the diet. But I know scores of people who don't have gallbladders and have absolutely zero problem eating a high-fat diet. What does happen though is that people have this transitionary period, obviously, where they are not able to digest the amount of fat that they're taking in. And again, that can produce that sort of digestive distress. Yeah. So I haven't had one 17 years and I've always had it since. Yeah, absolutely. So, so some people may need to gradually increase the amount of fat until the amount of bile is high enough for them to deal with that. Other people may have some digestive distress while they're increasing the amount of bile. But ultimately, as we eat fat, the body is able to produce more bile from the cholesterol and everything else that we start to produce. So there is that mechanism there for producing plenty of bile for fat. Yeah, good. I'm glad to hear it, Gail. That's fab. So yeah, for some people it takes longer, basically, if they haven't got a gallbladder. However, most people, like I said, it's not that the gallbladder makes bile, it just holds it. So we will still produce bile and we still will be able to digest fat without any problem. But for some people it can take slightly longer to make that transition. Yeah. Absolutely. So yeah, so for some people it's an issue, for other people not so much. But I would say in the main, people seem to have no issues at all, whether they've got a gallbladder or not. So yeah, it's almost as if we're designed to eat this way, which is just shock horror. Yeah. So that's most of the common things. So I'm just wondering if anyone else has had any side effects or to the point of seeing oil. Yeah, absolutely. So what you're seeing then, Gail, if you've got oil on the water, is undigested fat. It suggests that there is not enough bile yet for the amount of fat that you are eating. It's not a pleasant thing, but like Sherry's mentioned, that there are supplemental bile salts which you can take. However, most people will eventually be able to produce enough bile, whether they hold it in a bladder or not, to digest fat. So it's for some people it's just a longer period. Cool. Okie dokie. So is there anything else that you guys have thought of in terms of common side effects or transitionary blips that you can think that maybe I've got some practical tips on? Because I do talk to a lot of people who are starting out, so I do hear lots of different things. But the two things I would say is people not replacing electrolytes, and that's a biggie really, because a lot of the really, really horrible, unpleasant side effects come from not replacing electrolytes. And the second one is they're just not understanding when I say high fat, how high fat I mean, because it is significantly more. And when we don't eat enough fat on a ketogenic diet, then we're literally just on a bit of a starvation diet, because all we're eating is meat and veg, and that's not enough. So you get hunger and cravings and low energy, and people saying, I can't do this, I can't stick to it. It's normally because they're just not eating enough. Still get breakouts. Yeah, absolutely. So skin breakouts. So initially with the first couple of months, you've got that sort of detoxing and all the stuff being released out the fat cells. Now, if you think of fat cells, they're just storage mechanisms in the body. Not only do they store excess carbohydrate, which is turned into triglycerides and then shunted into fat cells, but they also store toxins. Basically, when the body doesn't know what to do with all the chemicals and the heavy metals and all the hormones that are running rampant around us, when it doesn't know what to do with them and they're in excess, it kind of just shoves them in fat cells out of the way, so they stop hurting other things in the body. And of course, when we start releasing fat from our fat cells, all the junk that we stored in there with the fat, this is insulin, by the way, doing all this, shoving all these things into the fat cells, then with the triglycerides that we release, a lot of the other stuff that was in that fat cell comes out as well. So all the stored sex hormones, which are cholesterol based, by the way, all of the stored sex hormones come out, and all the toxins and all the yucky stuff that we rammed into those fat cells to protect the body start to be released back into the bloodstream. And of course, the liver will do what it can to detoxify and to process those toxins and to get rid of them through the urine and the feces and everything else. However, another way that stuff comes out of our body is through the skin. The skin is a huge organ that detoxes the body. So there's loads of stuff coming out of our oil glands and out of our sweat glands and everything else. So unfortunately, that is the biggest organ of the body doing its part and doing its role of detox in the body. So you've got that. So you've got all those sex hormones. So it's kind of like puberty in reverse, with all these hormones like running through us as well. And of course that we get the toxins as well. But as we go through, what a lot of people notice who had issues with hormones before is obviously keto starts to regulate hormones, and people who weren't having a menstrual cycle, for example, may start to have some of the signs of their menstrual cycle coming back. So I've always had monthly spots. It's always been the case, and you know, everything's just the same on keto. So a lot of the time I do have really good skin, and I think I'm certainly through that detox phase. But yeah, in terms of hormones, they're still very much there. Yeah. So Shamila says, I see my hair becoming very, very oily. Yeah, and again, that's a hormonal thing. And if you remember back to when we were teenagers and how greasy we were back then as well, it's the sex hormones being released from the fat cells that do that. You'd be glad to know, as you go through, as the fat cells are diminished and sort of burnt up and eaten up by the body, particularly if you're fasting, then you will notice that these symptoms start to decrease. But yeah, it's very hormonal, unfortunately, particularly around the first couple of months, really, when there's lots of fat cells releasing all this stored estrogen and progesterone that was in there. Okay. Yeah, so yeah, I think that's the main things. Has anyone else had any crazy side effects or any issues with making the transition? What was difficult for you? Was there anything that you found particularly difficult, or that I haven't mentioned? Yeah. So Sherry's saying, hadn't had a cycle for over 5 years. I've had 2 since I started KISS in January. Yeah. So I think what's interesting, Sherry, is that the reason that you weren't having cycles was because of the condition that you had. Now we know that keto is pretty much the cure for that particular condition. So when that goes, then it's potentially baby time again, Sherry. Who knows? Who knows? There's lots and lots of keto babies because people get so fertile. And particularly if their partner is keto as well, it's a recipe for disaster. So Shamila said sweet craving. Absolutely, it is really tricky. Yeah. The longer we nurture the sweet cravings, the longer that they will be there. So I don't know whether you were watching the beginning of the video, but it's one of the things I talked about. And the number one tip for sweet cravings is to kill the craving, not nurture it. So you need to really lean heavily and fall in love with ketogenic food, and eat your proteins and your fats and your vegetables and your nuts and seeds, because they are the foods that will get you through this entire journey, and they're the ones that you're going to have to eat for the rest of your life if you want to maintain the results that you get on keto. So move away from the sweet stuff. Sweet stuff is what people who are addicted to carbohydrates and have metabolic issues eat. Those people who are fit and healthy and lean are normally eating better food. Okay. Oh, Gail, have we got you worried now, Gail? Yeah, it's not for everyone, and there definitely comes a point where you've gone past the point of no return. However, I do know there's a lot of people who've been perimenopausal, so on that cusp, who have gone at least 5 years back, and have got their cycle back completely. But I think once the menopause has gone all the way through, then I don't think so many people have that issue. But I think there's a definite reversal in the aging process when you go into a ketogenic lifestyle. I don't know if you've seen photos of me 2 years ago, but I have definitely lost 5 years. Absolutely. Physically, emotionally, mentally, I am definitely 5 years younger. Oh, bless you, Gail. Can you imagine? Yeah. But yeah, there's a definite age reversal that goes on, and I think people who are on the cusp of menopause have definitely come away from the menopause and have delayed it through the ketogenic lifestyle, and there's good reason to do that, isn't there? Everyone wants to stay physically as young as possible, and I think keto is one of those things that when we look I can just remember what our oldest was like when we broke the news that our youngest was on the way. He was 18 at the time and just thought it was the most horrifying thing that he had ever heard in his entire life. And I think his words to his dad were, surely you know better. I think was his words. He was so mortified that at 18 that there was going to be a baby in the house. So yeah, I can understand. That was only at 18, so I can imagine. Yeah. Oh, my husband would cry too. Anyway. So they're the main things, and I hope that on day 4 we've covered some of the main issues that people come across. What we'll do as we go further into the month, I want to talk about things like weight loss stalls, why they happen. I won't call them stalls, I'm going to call them plateaus because that's actually what they are. I'm going to talk about events, social situations. We're going to talk about mindset. We're going to talk about lots of different things. But I hope tonight that we talked a little bit about physical symptoms, practical solutions. Here's my oldest daughter's just come in to say hello. Yeah, so we've talked a little bit about those things, and I hope that they're really helpful. If you know anybody who could really do with this sort of interaction and this sort of education, please invite them in. Get them to take the May challenge. They don't have to do any of it. They can just watch the videos either in here or on YouTube or wherever. But hopefully this may reassure and may educate, may show people that we're not falling down dead within 6 months of giving up sugar. It should be helpful. Yeah, she's already snuck off. She's disappeared. Yeah, so hopefully this will be useful to people. So if you do know people in other groups or in your friends list or wherever, please send them my way. I think that more people need to know this. I mean, I hope that you've all watched The Magic Pill, either on Netflix or YouTube. You know how important it is for the whole of humanity to understand where we are going really, really wrong at the moment. It just seems like governments don't care, and they don't. They just seem to not care. And the institutions are so proud that they can't admit that they were wrong. And it leaves this gap, this knowledge gap amongst professionals and amongst specialists and amongst charities and amongst the whole there's this gap of knowledge, and it's really, really sad. We need to use all the money that we're using to medicate people. If only we use that to educate people about food and to give maybe people some money to buy good food, and if we subsidized farmers who were producing good food, and if we made it so that instead of the GMOs and instead of the grain, that we pumped our investment and our energy into the foods that would make us well, we have the potential to save billions of lives. I mean, this is it's so big when you look at how many people are dying, and how many people will be dying by 2020 from obesity related illnesses, simply because they don't have the information that they need. I think it's criminal. I think it's so wrong. And I fell victim to it. We all did. Let's be fair. We're all here because we fell victim to incorrect information. However, I've now got it right. I'm now healthy and I can eat as much as I like, which is fantastic. And it's just about what we eat. That's the key to it. It's not about how much or even how often sometimes. It's just about what we eat. And it's very simple. Okay, I'm going to leave you now. It's getting late here. Yeah, absolutely, Gail. And unfortunately, although I'd like to say that most of them aren't lying, most of them simply don't know the truth. And unfortunately, I've, probably 10 years ago now, I went through a medical degree myself, and nutrition was not something that was talked about in any shape or form, which was really bad, really, because I was caring for people who could really have done with that nutritional advice, and it could have saved lives there. But again, what's taught, unfortunately, in our institutions is that modern medicine is the way. And the reason that people are fat is because they eat too much and they move too little. Well, believe me, that's not the case, because I probably eat more now, and I don't move anymore, unfortunately, than I used to. So that's not necessarily the case. So Do you have farmers markets? Yes, we do. We have amazing agriculture actually, and pretty much my whole family is in farming, in dairy and in lamb, because Wales is the land of sheep basically. We've very green and pleasant land here, and we've got lots of grass, so we're incredibly lucky with our meat and with our dairy. The quality of our products are incredible. Unfortunately, it's expensive, but the quality is definitely there. Our beef is fantastic, our lamb is fantastic, and our dairy is superb. It's all grass fed, particularly in Wales. You know, we've our dairy herds are in the fields all year round, apart from stinking weather, and they graze and they're fed correctly and they're looked after very well. So we're very lucky. We're very lucky, and you know, I see the difference. You know, I think someone showed a picture today in a ketogenic for beginners group of cream. Believe me, that was not cream. There must have been 20 ingredients in that pot, and I don't think any of it was actually from a cow, which is crazy, stuff. Yeah. Oh, it's great. It's great. Yeah, I mean, we're not big vegetable producers because it's so cold. we do animals far better here than we do vegetables, which is why when I talk to people about the diet of early Northern Europeans, I do have to say, you know, what vegetables do you think our ancestors ate? Because the whole of Britain was wooded, so there wasn't any agricultural land. So you know, what did we eat? You know, the truth of the matter is we were very, very carnivorous. You know, we had deer and rabbits and all sorts of game, wild boar, they're extinct now. You know, we had bears, we had wolves, we had beef, we had the whole thing. You know, we had incredible wildlife. We ate it all basically. It's no longer here, but yeah, we weren't growing vegetables, and we've only started in the last few hundred years really, since the agricultural revolution. It hasn't been very long at all. Before that, you know, we were hunting and killing, or we were going hungry. So yeah. Oh, saying a Jersey cow gave off 30% plus. Oh my goodness. Very lucky, Gail. Very, very lucky. We'll have to have a keto convention at your place. And you can feed us all, and we'll all go home with bags of stuff as well. Sounds amazing. Right, that's it. I've got to get to bed, because even though they've only just gone to bed, my children, the youngsters, the young ones will be up early. So I'm going to head off now and have a sleep. But I hope you've enjoyed. I hope you've enjoyed tonight. And send more people our way. You know, let's start a revolution. Let's start the health revolution. Yeah, that was me as well, Sherry. Right, okay. Have a lovely evening, everybody. I'll catch you tomorrow for day 5. And to be honest, I've got to think about what to say tomorrow to make sure that we keep up the momentum. But I'll probably talk about why we don't snack. I think that's probably the next thing to talk about, because although I've said that in those first 2 weeks you can eat what you like, and that's true, because the only thing you need to think about is giving up sugar, there does come a point where snacks can hinder your progress. So we're going to talk about that a little bit tomorrow. That would be a good idea. So we'll talk about why we don't graze all day, pretty much because we're not cows, what snacks do to the body, where the idea of snacks came from, because it's certainly not a traditional thing, and we'll talk about meal timing and things like that. So we'll do that tomorrow, and it'll probably be a similar time. However, I am considering staying up really, really, really late tomorrow, but it depends really what's going on with kids and things on Sunday morning. But yeah, so I will see you tomorrow night for day 5, and we will talk about meal times and snacks. Bye all.